Welcome. My name is Shane Mathis, and today we're going to be talking about the nonverbal aspects of the voice. And I'm going to teach you how to use your voice to inspire, motivate, and exude confidence. Speaking of which, what do James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, and Heath Morrison all have in common? They all use nonverbal aspects of vocal delivery, such as pitch, rate, volume, tone, and onset, to elicit a response from their listeners. These narrators use the nonverbal aspects of their delivery are oftentimes more important than the actual words that they use. Today, we will talk about how you too can use these nonverbal aspects of vocal delivery to inspire, motivate, and exude confidence. There are three main points that I'd like to show you today, and those are one, that pitch matters, two, that tone really does set the tone, and three, that onset and duration of message provides subtle clues. Using these tools effectively will lead you to inspire, motivate, and again, exude confidence. Now, the first topic that I'd like to talk about today is pitch and why pitch matters. First, what message does your pitch convey? The difference in your pitch and your voice can drastically change the message that you are trying to convey. For instance, a high pitch can be a sign of nervousness or deception. Research shows that increased vocal pitch ties significantly to deceptive responses. On the other hand, there's also the low pitch. This type of pitch exudes confidence, not only in the person giving the message, but also by the listener receiving the message. Now, I've got a couple examples that I'm going to walk through of different pitches that I've seen in real life scenarios. I'm going to give you a couple of those examples. And the first example was with my vice president of sales. Now, his message, and I'll give you a little bit of background on this. On this first example, is when I asked my vice president of sales to do an assessment for a project that I actually had for managing organizational dynamics. When I first asked him to do the assessment, he answered with a confident, "Yes, I can do that." However, the next day he called me back and his stance all of a sudden had changed. I could immediately tell by the high pitch in his voice that something was off, as he practically spoke to me in soprano. So I could tell there was some deception going on with that excuse that he was giving me for why he couldn't or wouldn't do the assessment. Next, I'm going to give you an example of someone using a low pitch to convey their message, and this example involves my CEO, Brett Roberts, at Credit Acceptance's annual leadership convention. Now, when he used his pitch, he stated the numbers of the company over the past year and what the future outlook was in a very low pitch, which conveyed to all of us that he was very knowledgeable on the topic he was speaking on, and he exuded confidence in our product, not just the product, but also in us. And next, we're going to move from the pitch and talk about the tone of your voice and how the tone really can set the tone of the message. The different tones you can use in your message can also have a big impact on the message you are trying to convey. So the first question you'd like to ask is, what message does your tone convey? Well, a deep tone usually shows maturity and trust and is usually very well received by listeners. Now, the next tone would be your quiet tone, which is kind of the opposite of the deep tone, but that shows weakness or uncertainty. It also often leaves the audience feeling as if the speaker isn't knowledgeable or is hiding something from them. Now, the last tone is probably the most important tone, and this is where you can exude confidence, is the firm tone. Now, this one shows confidence, knowledge, and importance. It gives the audience the idea that the speaker is very confident, knowledgeable, and is someone that should be viewed as important within that organization. Now, using the same examples that I used earlier, I'm going to talk about how those tones can be used in everyday scenarios. I'm going to use, like I said, the same examples from before and go over what the different tones were in both of those messages. In my vice president of sales message, when he was being, that I perceived as being deceptive in his tone, was also rather quiet. And this was another reason to lead me to believe that he was uncertain about his answer or he was just making it up as he went along. On the other hand, now CEO Brett Roberts at Credit Acceptance's annual leadership convention used a very firm tone that exuded confidence and knowledge, and he left the audience with that feeling that they had just been listening to someone who was very important within this organization, which of course he was, but his tone really reflected that. Now, last but certainly not least, I'm going to be talking about the last point, which is the onset and duration of the message. Now, what message does onset and duration convey? Okay, so onset, if you're looking at onset and duration, what we're looking at is there a quicker than expected response? Okay, if someone answers your question with a quicker than expected response, it can show that they're either A, unsure about what they're talking about, or B, they're just spitting out whatever pops into their head, or they had rehearsed that line before they were ever asked the question. Next would be the extended time before response. So instead of a quick response, they take a longer time to respond. This can lead you to believe that they are uncertain about their question, aren't as knowledgeable as they claim to be, or they are trying to think of a way out of that scenario. So lastly, we want to talk about is the length of the message. Now, if the message length is too long, the person speaking can be viewed as a person that's trying to be deceptive, as they're trying to fill the gaps with needless, material. Vice versa, a message that's too short can cause a listener to think the person speaking doesn't view the topic as important or isn't as knowledgeable in the area in which they are speaking. Now, again, I'm going to use the same examples from before so I don't confuse you, but in the same two messages with my vice president of sales and the CEO of credit acceptance, we see that, the vice president of sales had a slower onset, which usually means it is more deceptive. He also stumbled through his answer and seemed to be filling the time, talking to me, making up, excuses and using meaningless information that really had no bearing on the assessment in which I was asking him to do. On the other hand, CEO Brett Roberts at Credit Acceptance's annual leadership convention had a quicker onset, and the duration of the message seemed to be that on that fine line between being too short and being too long, and was viewed as a very honest and knowledgeable message to everybody that was in attendance and that I talked to. So, in conclusion, as you can tell by the examples used, the pitch, tone, onset, and duration of message plays a key role in the nonverbal aspect of how a message is received by the listener. You can see that the way in which you convey your message is just as important, if not more important, than the actual words you use. So master your use of pitch, tone, onset, and duration, and soon you'll be inspiring, motivating, and exuding confidence to your listeners. Thank you.